She thought she could boss the post office like she ruled her HOA. But the postmaster had enough, and when he called the authorities, the truth behind her obsession with the mail would shock the entire town. If you love real-life drama with crazy twists, hit that subscribe button and keep watching, because this one spirals fast. Karen Linton was the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Ridge Estates, a gated suburban community where every blade of grass and every holiday wreath had to meet her personal standards. As head of the Homeowners Association, she had built a reputation for being meticulous, controlling, and downright unbearable. She'd fined people for leaving their trash bins out 30 minutes too long, scolded kids for chalk drawings on the sidewalk, and even forced a neighbor to repaint his house because she claimed the shade of blue clashed with the community aesthetic. Her power had gone to her head, but her latest obsession, HOA mail, would take her from petty tyranny to full-blown scandal. It started when she became convinced someone in the HOA was stealing mail meant for the board, secret donations, or worse, complaints against her leadership. Every week, she marched into the local post office demanding to inspect all HOA correspondence, insisting she was authorized to collect it. The postmaster, a patient man named Henry Cole, had tolerated her for months. Henry had worked for the USPS for over 20 years, seen his share of difficult customers, but never had he encountered someone who treated the post office like her personal filing cabinet. Karen's tone was always sharp, dripping with entitlement. "I'm here to pick up all HOA mail. Everything addressed to Maple Ridge Estates. Give it to me, now," she'd demand, tapping her foot impatiently. Henry would politely explain, "Ma'am, only the person listed on the P.O. box can retrieve the mail. You're not authorized." Each time, she'd huff, storm off, and threaten to call the regional postal supervisor. But one Tuesday morning, she came indifferently, more agitated, eyes darting, holding a stack of printed HOA bylaws and claiming federal backing. According to Article 9B of our community charter, she barked, "All mail addressed to the HOA is property of the board president." "That's me. You're withholding official documents." Henry sighed. "Mrs. Linton, that's not how federal mail law works. Your charter doesn't override USPS regulations." The line behind her grew, murmurs of annoyance rising. But Karen didn't care. She leaned over the counter and hissed, "Then maybe I should call the police, since you're interfering with community governance." That was the moment Henry's patience began to crack. He calmly stepped back, looked at the line of waiting customers, and said, "Ma'am, step aside." She refused. She started filming him, yelling about government corruption, and waving her phone in his face. Henry pressed a silent alarm button under the counter, a feature for emergencies he'd never thought he'd use for an HOA president. When two local police officers arrived, Karen greeted them like she'd summoned them herself. "Finally, arrest this man for obstruction of HOA business." The officers looked confused. Henry, calm but firm, explained the situation. One officer asked Karen if she had proof she was authorized to pick up the mail. She thrust a piece of paper forward. It was a printed email from herself, stating she had full authority. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this isn't legal authorization. You need the names listed on the P.O. box form." Karen's voice rose. "You're all in on it, aren't you? The HOA's secretary is hiding mail, probably stealing checks, and you're helping them." The commotion drew a crowd. Someone started recording. Within hours, the video of HOA Karen screaming at Postmaster was circulating online. By evening, it had over 50,000 views on a local Facebook group. But that was just the start. When the HOA board found out, they called an emergency meeting, not to support her, but to discuss her removal. It turned out that Karen had been using her position to funnel HOA funds into community beautification projects that happened to involve hiring her cousin's landscaping company and ordering expensive custom signs. The treasurer, who'd recently gone missing from meetings, had been trying to audit her spending and had sent confidential letters to the HOA's P.O. box. Letters Karen was desperate to intercept. That's why she wanted the mail so badly. The next morning, Henry got a visit, not from Karen this time, but from two federal postal inspectors. They wanted to review the footage from the post office and the statements from the previous day. Apparently, Karen had filed an official complaint against Henry for mail interference, but it had backfired. The inspectors began looking into her and discovered she had tried to use her HOA number to apply for an additional P.O. box under her name, claiming it was for board operations. That was mail fraud, a federal offense. Days later, Karen stormed into the post office again, determined to clear her name. Henry was ready. He'd been briefed by the inspectors and told to remain calm. When she arrived, cameras rolling again, she demanded to see the master ledger of all HOA mail. Henry, in his crisp uniform and steady voice, said, "Ma'am, please step aside. You are trespassing on federal property." Her face went red. "Trespassing? I'm the president of Maple Ridge Estates. You can't ban me from the mail." But when she tried to grab a stack of envelopes from the counter, Henry raised his voice for the first time. "That's enough." The entire post office froze. "You've been warned, Mrs. Linton. This is a federal facility. Interfering with mail is a crime." His tone was so sharp, so authoritative, that even she paused. Seconds later, the inspectors emerged from a back office, badges gleaming. "Mrs. Linton," one said, "we'd like to speak with you." Her bravado melted. She stammered, You can't arrest me, I'm just picking up mail." But they weren't there to arrest her, yet. They were there to gather evidence. Turns out, her attempts to intercept HOA mail weren't isolated. They'd traced multiple instances where she had redirected invoices, donation checks, and even late fee notices to her home address. She had effectively been controlling not only the HOA meetings but the entire flow of information and funds. The inspectors interviewed Henry, the other postal workers, and even some residents who'd complained about missing letters. Karen's downfall unfolded over the next few weeks, but it didn't happen quietly. When word spread that federal investigators were looking into her, she doubled down, sending newsletters to the community claiming she was the victim of a deep state conspiracy, led by jealous neighbors and a rogue postmaster. She even hosted an emergency town hall at her home, where she ranted about corruption in federal mail distribution. Only a handful of people showed up, mostly out of curiosity. Meanwhile, Henry received messages of support from across the community and even a commendation from his regional supervisor for professionalism under pressure. But behind the scenes, things were getting darker. The treasurer, who'd initially vanished, resurfaced and handed over a trove of documents showing that Karen had been embezzling HOA funds for over 3 years. The checks she'd tried to retrieve were payment stubs, evidence of her misuse of funds. With that, the authorities had enough to act. One morning, as Karen was out walking her dog, 2 unmarked vehicles pulled up. The inspectors, accompanied by local police, handed her a warrant. She was charged with mail tampering, obstruction, and misuse of HOA funds. The neighborhood watched from behind curtains as the once untouchable Karen was led to the car, still protesting, "I am the HOA." The arrest went viral. News stations picked up the story. HOA president arrested for mail fraud became a headline on local TV. People online called Henry a hero. But even then, the story wasn't over. During the investigation, it came out that Karen had been blackmailing certain HOA members, threatening to expose minor code violations if they didn't vote her way. She'd created a network of fear, until it all unraveled at the post office that day. Months later, when her trial began, Henry was called to testify. He wore his uniform, calm and dignified, and told the court exactly what happened: the yelling, the false claims, the moment she tried to grab federal mail. The jury didn't take long. Karen was found guilty on multiple counts and sentenced to community service and probation, along with a hefty fine. Maple Ridge Estates voted in a new board, dissolved several of Karen's absurd rules, and even threw a small celebration at the local park, inviting Henry as an honorary guest. He attended quietly, shook hands, and declined to speak on camera. For him, it wasn't about fame, it was about standing up for principle. As for Karen, she disappeared from public view for months, her once perfect lawn overgrown, her mailbox empty. But whispers spread that she'd moved to another town. Rumor had it, she was already joining another HOA, this time as assistant treasurer. When Henry heard that, he chuckled softly, muttering, "Some lessons take a lifetime." The video of her meltdown remained one of the most watched clips in the area, millions of views, endless comments, and the occasional meme titled, "The mail must go through unless Karen says otherwise." It became a cautionary tale for every overbearing wall leader who thought their authority extended beyond their subdivision gates. In the end, the post office remained what it always was, a quiet, steady institution that didn't bend to ego or entitlement. And Henry, the man who refused to be intimidated, reminded everyone that even in the age of chaos and viral outrage, there are still lines you don't cross, especially the ones marked federal property.